My brother recently bought a house just over the border in England. My parents found an old map of that area that has his new house on it. They have asked me to make a picture frame for this old map as a housewarming present. This is the wood I'll be using. It's Welsh oak from mid-Wales. I'm marking the pieces and then cutting with the track saw. I didn't set the saw deep enough to cut all the way through, so I had to go back and cut it again. But the blade got stuck and caused the edge to break. No worries though, as this gets cut off in the next step. The pieces are all the same length, but not quite straight and flat, so I'll rough cut the mitres with the mitre saw. Taking multiple passes with the mitre saw, as oak is quite hard and has a tendency to burn. During the layout, I can get it square, but not flat. So I'll stick the pieces together with this black tape. Then I can put the tape away. I can put the tape away. Away, first time. I can then use the router with this flattening bit to get them all the same size. Now to check it's all still square. Things looking good so far. Apart from this one. And here's why. Still not all the same shape and size or flatness. So after lots of flattening and lots of dust later that definitely didn't end up in my pockets for weeks, we have ourselves a square. Well, rectangle, but who's really counting anyway? Cutting the parallel pieces at the same time, using the same black tape to hold things all together. When lined up, the angles weren't all perfect, so I made this little wedge to fill the void, and when it's in, they'll never know. Sanding the individual pieces of the frame up to 240 grit. Using this 45-degree chamfer bit in the router, I can add the detail onto the faces of the frame. Taking 4 shallow passes with the router so as not to burn the wood. Reshaping the wedge to fit with the new edge profile. Using this Dayglow orange tape for no reason other than geographical convenience to protect the wood from glue squeeze out, so I have less finishing to do at the end of the process. Using what turned out to be far too much glue, I joined the pieces together and taped the corners to hold it. Now, let's unstick all of that orange. Some of these joints are a bit ropey, so I'll do my first ever attempt at adding a spline to the mitre joint. A quick sanding before marking up with my square. Using the tenon saw, I cut the slots for the splines. Cleaning up the slots with the chisel, and then using the knife to mark the ends of each of the slots. Once most of the material is removed, I can use a 45-degree offcut to help maintain a consistent angle for my chisel to work at. I said some of the joints were a bit ropey, but I'll stick them back together with glue and then hold things together with this silver tape, purely because I've run out of the black tape. This is some sycamore that I will use as the spline. It's not flat, so I'll flatten it and sand it to fit. Rough cutting the individual splines. These don't need to be perfect, as they'll be trimmed once they're in place. This one didn't quite fit, so back out with a chisel to widen the slot. We now have 4 very oddly shaped splines that can then be glued into place. Out with the silver tape again. This one broke during the panic, but I'm sure it'll be fine. Trimming most of the excess off with the tenon saw. And then the flush trim bit in the router. A bit of white spirit to clean things up and to remove all the dust, and then we can move on to the backboard. Using masking tape along the cut lines to avoid any possibility of any tear out when using the track saw. My aim still isn't any better. Using the biggest straight cut bit I have to cut the recess in the back of the frame. I started with the guide on the inside of the frame, but unbeknownst to me, the bit had started to work its way down because of the strain that this was putting onto the router bit, and this scared the life out of me. This is how deep it started with, and this is where it ended up at. So I changed to have the guide on the outside of the frame to keep my fingers well away from the danger zone. Squaring up the rounded inside corners with the knife before moving on to the chisel. Using the shape of the backboard as a reference to get a good fit. Using this clear polystyrene as a substitute for glass to go over the front of the map. It needs a sharp knife, so I'll do a quick blade swap. Multiple cuts later, and we have it to size. Again, referencing and trimming the frame to achieve that perfect fit. Lots of sanding later, 80, 120, 180 and 240. I've not mounted a picture before, so I'm making this bit up as I go along. I'm marking the inside of the frame on the backboard, and then I'll take it inside to finish the job. Using double-sided tape that has been in the garage for as long as we've lived here to stick the frame onto the backboard. Now to finish the frame with linseed oil to bring out that rustic warmth to the oak and to highlight the contrast in the spline. Removing the protective film from both sides. Some of you might enjoy this process. I'll use these little eyelets screwed into the frame to help hang it on the wall. Using nails to keep everything in place. I'm reliably informed that this knot is a round turn and 2 half hitches. And there we have it, a Welsh oak map frame with sycamore splines hanging on the wall in my brother's new house.